Hello, I'm Sergeant Jerry Cormier. Welcome to another edition of American Forces Perspective. NATO has entered its second year of airdropping food and supplies into Bosnia-Herzegovina as part of Operation Provide Promise. Air Force Sergeant Daniela Marcus looks at how the operation is going after all this time and how those involved are handling it.
After a year of fine-tuning, the airdrop operation at Rhein-Main Air Base, Germany, runs very smoothly. But that doesn't mean it's become routine.
Something new happens every day. The situation changes in the field. You have to adapt yourself quite quickly, and that's one of the Air Force specialties, is to react quickly.
In early January, the operation was expanded to help Bosnians suffering through a harsh winter. The nightly flights were doubled to 12 C-130s packed with things like blankets and heavy tarps. The airdrop missions are rarely canceled, and then only when absolutely necessary. February 28th, the day 4 planes violating the no-fly zone were shot down, was one such occasion. This is one of the planes that flew the night after that incident. The crew, from an Air National Guard unit from Oklahoma, was new to the airdrop operation, with only 3 drops under its belt.
Well, we were just briefed of the shootings yesterday, and we were told to keep an eye out for enemy aircraft and anything that was flying, to be more observant.
5 seconds. Green light. Clear, please. And load's clear.
We didn't see anything, and as we flew, it was as normal as the other 3 flights that we've been on prior to tonight.
So far, the U.S., French, and German aircraft involved in these missions have dropped some 18 tons of food, medicine, and other supplies into Bosnia, and there's no end in sight.
Even after a year of airdrops, these missions are nowhere near routine. UN threats of airstrikes and engagements of aircraft violating the no-fly zone have raised tensions in the sky over Bosnia to a new level. Sergeant Daniela Marcus, Air Force News, in the skies over Bosnia.
Since its January activation at Rhein-Main Air Base, Germany, Delta Squadron has been flying to help feed and clothe the people of Bosnia. The crews, made up of Reserve and Air National Guard members, fly the majority of airdrop and air-land relief missions for Operation Provide Promise. This is the result of hours of preparation by many of Delta Squadron's 300 members. They come from Air Force Reserve and Air National Guard units from all over the United States, flying 60% of the airdrop missions. They also fly 90% of the missions to Sarajevo, bringing supplies or evacuating casualties. The risk involved in these operations is real, but not unfamiliar to the air crews.
We train and use the same techniques every day that we do whether there's action or whether there's not action. We always make the assumption that there's going to be some type of action. And, of course, when it doesn't happen, we're relieved. But if it does happen, we try to be prepared for that.
The mission itself is as close to a real combat mission that we're going to get versus the training back in the States. You train for the mission, but now you're actually going out and doing it.
Whoa. Delta Squadron's only job is supporting Provide Promise. That's why they get the bulk of the missions to Bosnia. Their active-duty counterpart, the 37th Airlift Squadron, flies some missions, but not nearly as many as the Guard and Reserve. That's because the 37th is kept busy supporting other missions in the European theater. While the United States Air Forces in Europe continues to support a number of operations, the drawdown of forces continues. The last 3 F-15 Eagles at Bitburg Air Base have departed for the United States. Staff Sergeant Jim Frost watched as the aircraft left the base for the last time.
Ground crews were blasted by freezing rain and biting winds as they made final preparations for the departure of the last 3 aircraft owned by the 36th Fighter Wing at Bitburg Air Base. The jets were transferred as part of ongoing force reductions that called for a total of 55 aircraft to be moved from Bitburg to other locations.
We all understand that our country has made a decision in terms of reducing the military defense budget, and we're part of that. But we feel good about what we've done for the last 41 years here, being in Bitburg, and especially flying the Eagle and being the tip of the sword.
General Carlton flew one of the last F-15s. The General's final launch from Bitburg marks the end of the 36 Fighter Wings fighter mission. His wing has a history of success, including shooting down several Iraqi jets during Operation Desert Storm.
And the bottom line is Bitburg's done its job, and Bitburg and excellence are synonymous terms, and we're going to go out in style.
The last 3 F-15s were sent to bases in Florida. 2 flew to Tyndall Air Force Base, and the other went to the base at Egmont. Sergeant Jim Frost, Air Force News, Bitburg Air Base, Germany.
USAFE medical personnel are back home following a 6-month deployment to Zagreb, Croatia. About 80 people went to Zagreb as the 48th Air Transportable Hospital supporting Operation Provide Promise. As the Air Force leaves, the Navy will assume control of what will now be called the Fleet Hospital Zagreb. The transition will take about 3 weeks. While the Air Force staff came from a number of bases around Europe, the majority were from RAF Lakenheath, the United Kingdom. The Navy is the 3rd branch of the military to operate the 60-bed facility. Air Force civil engineer teams built the hospital back in November 1992. The Army was the first service to operate the facility, which is the main treatment center for all United Nations Protection Force personnel.
A medical emergency, and an ambulance team responds.
Launch to base step 11. My patient exhibiting all shock signs. I've got her mask trousers and 2 large bore IVs.
Skills and equipment are put to the test in a crisis. Being prepared makes the difference. Having a full supply of blood is an important part of the preparation. You can help by donating to the USAREUR Blood Bank. The blood you give could save the life of someone in need. Maybe someone you know. Maybe someone you love. Help to make a difference before the crisis. Contact your local military hospital and find out how you can donate to the USAREUR Blood Bank.
Driving in the United Kingdom takes extra attention. Vehicles normally pass on the right. On high-speed carriageways, look out for traffic behind as well as in front of you before passing. When traveling on small, winding country roads, pass quickly but cautiously. And always keep an eye on the other drivers in heavy traffic. Be smart when driving in the UK. It's a safe way to enjoy your stay.
Two F-16 Fighting Falcons from Ramstein Air Base, Germany, shot down 4 fighter jets believed to be Serbian. The F-16s were flying in support of NATO's Operation Deny Flight. Besides violating the airspace over Bosnia, the aircraft were allegedly bombing a factory and a hospital. The incident took place on February 28th. Admiral Mike Borda, commander of NATO Forces Southern Europe, said, "We did what we said we would do." Since October 1992, military flights over Bosnia have been prohibited by UN Security Council Resolution 816. In April 1993, NATO put teeth in that resolution by enforcing a no-fly zone over Bosnia. One of the F-16 pilots gave 2 warnings to the trespassers before obtaining permission to engage. Besides preventing air warfare from becoming part of the conflict in the former Yugoslavia, Senior Airman Bettina Kluver says F-16s on temporary duty at Aviano Air Base, Italy, continue to watch for artillery in the Sarajevo area.
They fly fully armed, but for now the mission of the F-16 Fighting Falcons from Ramstein is not hostile. The pilots patrol Sarajevo and the surrounding area, looking through the clouds for artillery movement or anything else that would prompt more serious action.
Well, sometimes see a lot of weather. Sometimes we can see the ground, and then we work with people on the ground out there, talking to them on the radio, trying to identify areas of interest.
The pilots know there still is the possibility of them having to use the missiles they carry, but that aspect of their job is not as imminent as it was only days ago.
Actually, I think most of us are glad it's a peaceful conclusion. It has to be otherwise. We're ready, though.
For the United States Air Force, being part of Operation Deny Flight in conjunction with NATO Air Power is a historical event.
Well, it's the first time NATO Air Power has been called as a coalition to support a UN objective or resolution. So it is kind of a first-time thing. We're out there on the leading edge, and you always hear about it, but this time it's for real.
During the sorties flown here at Aviano, the F-16 pilots have proven again the capability of their aircraft and their personal expertise are an invaluable asset to NATO and peace. Senior Airman Bettina Kluber, Air Force News, Aviano Air Base, Italy.
Besides F-16s, Air Force A-10s are also helping patrol the skies over Bosnia-Herzegovina. Staff Sergeant Clay Cogstill says one A-10 squadron sent to Aviano Air Base, Italy, came under a new squadron flag while helping to keep peace in the Balkans.
The crews are still flying. These A-10 pilots are preparing to fly another mission in support of Operation Deny Flight, just as they have since July last year.
I still think we're doing an important job down here, and in my mind, we're helping to save some people on the ground.
In February, the 510th Fighter Squadron was inactivated. The A-10s now belong to the 81st Fighter Squadron. At their home base of Spangdahlem Air Base, Germany, the appropriate ceremonies commemorated the name change. But at Aviano, the UN's resolve to end the fighting in the Balkans remains the squadron's focus.
As far as I can tell, that the UN is serious and President Clinton's serious, and just sending the Secretary of Defense out here kind of points to that.
The 510th Fighter Squadron has logged well over 1,000 sorties for Operation Deny Flight. And now, as the 81st, the A-10s, along with their allied counterparts, will continue to fly, keeping the peace in the skies over Bosnia-Herzegovina. Sergeant Clay Cogstill, Air Force News, Aviano Air Base, Italy.
While the Spangdahlem A-10s flying in support of Operation Deny Flight will someday return to Germany, the Ramstein F-16s will stay at Aviano, becoming a permanent part of the 401st Fighter Wing. Staff Sergeant Daniela Marcus explains what the transition means to Ramstein.
The departure of 2 squadrons of F-16s and some 1,400 people leaves a void in Ramstein's identity as an airbase, one that will be quickly filled. The first C-130s from the 37th Airlift Squadron at Rhein-Main Air Base, Germany, which is drawing down, are expected in July. And soon after that, the first Combat Communications Squadron will move to Ramstein from nearby Sembach Air Base. But the needs of those 2 squadrons don't exactly match up with the facilities being vacated by the F-16s. So others at Ramstein are moving too.
There's quite a bit of shuffling. We're moving 10 squadrons and a group staff around the base to house and make room for the C-130s and the 1st Combat Com.
A number of construction projects need to be accomplished as well. They include additional ramp space, hangars, and the hardening of some runways.
You know, with the drawdown of Rhein-Main, there is about 100 million Deutschmarks that the German government is going to put at the disposal of German construction companies for 10 major projects here on the field.
Ramstein will have to close its runway to accomplish those projects.
The active runway at Ramstein, the runway proper, will be closed. Right now, our best estimates are from 29 August till 15 November. What we do during that period with the aircraft that would be here, we're still researching that to finalize an answer, and we still don't have a good answer there.
Ramstein already has 3 airlift missions: strategic, aeromedical, and operational support. The arrival of the C-130s and their tactical in-theater airlift mission will make the base the heart of USAFE's airlift operation. Sergeant Daniela Marcus, Air Force News, Ramstein Air Base, Germany.
The move of Ramstein's F-16s to Aviano Air Base, Italy, will make room for the 37th Airlift Squadron, moving from Rhein-Main Air Base, Germany. While that move is expected later this year, the C-130 crews are already training at Ramstein. It's like riding the biggest roller coaster in the world. It's like riding the biggest roller coaster in the world. These aren't the kinds of moves a C-130 normally makes, But this isn't a normal flight. It's a training flight, a chance for co-pilot Keith Wesley to test his skills with guidance from his instructor, Captain Mark Ott. Ramstein is already playing a bigger role in the operations of the 37th Airlift Squadron, but not just because of the move.
We come down here on a everyday basis, do the drawdown. A lot of the bases have been closing, so it gives us fewer and fewer bases to actually go to train. So this is just part of everyday training for us.
An advance team is due to arrive at Ramstein this spring to make preparations for the C-130 crews and their families.
Once the squadron moves down here, it'll be easier on our operations. We won't have to fly to different bases to get our training done. We can do all our training here, so it'll help out.
These proficiency training missions mean more than just training. They're also giving the pilots of the 37th Airlift Squadron a preview of things to come. Sergeant Jerry Cormier, Air Force News, Ramstein Air Base, Germany.
Air Force pilots train the way they fly, as a team.
And, Dog, what do you think we learned from this engagement?
Every team member's opinion counts, regardless of rank.
Exactly right.
Let creative thinking and working together work for you.
We can all learn from each other in today's Air Force. Use teamwork in your workplace and look for ways to improve what you do.
There's no doubt that we're living in stressful times. Between the drawdown and all the uncertainty that goes along with it, stress can really take its toll. By adopting a healthy lifestyle and exercising sensibly, you'll be able to handle stress better and at the same time get in shape for the new ergonomically cycle testing program. You'll look better and feel better, and you'll be able to face the challenges of today's new, leaner Air Force. It takes only about 30 minutes, 3 times a week, to really make a difference.
For one German teenager, time may be running out. He's fighting cancer. In conjunction with the Make-A-Wish Foundation, the United States Air Force is fulfilling one of his dreams. Senior Airman Bettina Kluver was on hand at Spangdahlem Air Base, Germany, when 18-year-old Roland Schuckermüller joined a KC-135 tanker crew on a refueling mission.
When Roland was asked by the German version of the Make-A-Wish Foundation what he had always dreamed of doing, he didn't have an answer right away. So Roland and his friend Mike got together and brainstormed.
I thought about it, and I didn't want to make something like Meeting a Star or something, because you are a pop concert, you can always go to a pop concert, and I wanted to make something that I could never do without hard wishes, and so we sat at home, and then Mike said, hey, what about flying? And then I said, yeah, flying is very, very good.
A doctor wouldn't give the okay for a flight on a fighter jet, so a tanker crew came to Spangdahlem to refuel fighters just to fulfill Roland's wish.
Basically, we took off from here at Spangdahlem, went up to what they call a sandy track, and refueled a couple, 4 German F4s, and then we had a bunch of F-15s and some 16s from Spangdahlem come up and refuel with us.
Roland spent most of the flight on his stomach, not because he was airsick, but because that's the position the boom operator is in while doing his job, and that's the best place to watch the refueling process.
Oh, it's actually pretty comfortable. It's a little cold. It's not as well insulated as the rest of the aircraft, but seemed to really enjoy it. He got a lot of good pictures out of it.
Saying he enjoyed the flight is an understatement. Roland was almost speechless.
It was great. It was, oh God, it's difficult to explain in English. It was great. It was The event 94.
After the flight, the tanker crew gave Roland a picture of the aircraft, a squadron patch, and coin as a memento of his special day. Senior Airman Bettina Kluver, Air Force News, Spangdahlem Air Base, Germany.
During the Cold War, the U.S. military spent millions of dollars building up its defense. But now the Cold War is over, and there are huge stockpiles of supplies and equipment throughout Europe that have never been used. Some of that equipment in the United Kingdom is finally going to be put to use, but as Senior Airman Brett Baker found out, not where you'd think.
A hospital in a box. Actually, 100 boxes. When the 608th Contingency Hospital at RAF Upwood closed last year, several $1 million in hospital equipment and supplies were no longer needed. So the equipment is going to several humanitarian efforts around the world. One is Operation Provide Hope. $7 million worth of hospital items was sent to 4 different hospitals in Minsk, Belarus, in the former Soviet Union. A 1,500-bed hospital went to a region of the world that only recently was considered America's enemy.
I would say there's a little irony, but it also is a very good idea to help these countries progress toward democracy.
Members of the U.S. Army 7th Medical Command packed up the equipment, and many of them had helped send medical supplies to Russia.
It makes me feel better about myself being able to help someone else. And like I said before, I am honored to be able to participate in such an event.
It took the teams 3 weeks to get everything packed, and it should all be in Minsk by mid-March. Senior Airman Brett Baker, Air Force News, RAF Upwood, the United Kingdom.
Defense Department planners hope to issue everyone new ID cards soon. The new cards take advantage of some of the latest computer technology. Tech Sergeant Buddy Vickers watched as the developers tested the system in Germany.
The new ID cards will be made at a small computer station that has a camera and laser printer attached. The picture on the card is a computer-stored image, so the printer puts the picture on the card.
The new card does not use any film, and consequently the physical cost of producing the card, the materials, is about 29 cents, which is about half of what it cost to do the card under the old system.
Everything on the card is computer-generated, which means an Army or Navy office could issue an Air Force ID card. On the back, there are numbers in the optical barcodes that can be scanned to verify the card is valid.
If someone comes in and says, I've lost my card, you issue them another one, you invalidate the old number, and if someone tries to use that card and it's scanned, it'll come up and say, gee, now grab that card, that's a lost or stolen card.
The paper is special, too. It bonds with the plastic used to laminate it, which allows them to take a lot of abuse.
We've taken them home and washed them. I don't know what the record is for the number of washings, but we've washed them a substantial number of times. And while these things are not indestructible, they are very sturdy.
The new cards are also smaller, making them easier to fit into a wallet. Developers are testing the new card at several locations around the world and want everybody to have a new card by the end of 1995. Sergeant Buddy Vickers, Air Force News, Ramstein Air Base, Germany.
Despite teaching students for years, the Air Ground Operations School at Sembach Air Base, Germany remains just as important today as it was in 1954. Staff Sergeant Jim Frost says the school's recent accomplishments include teaching UN protection forces, including the Berlin Brigade.
The Air Ground Operations School at Sembach Air Base helps Allied forces blend military air and ground combat operations. The school teaches Allied armies and air forces how to work in harmony during battle.
Friendly, 1.5 kilometers.
Recently, school instructors trained a multinational group of forward air controllers, or FACs, to support the United Nations Protection Force on duty in Bosnia-Herzegovina and Macedonia. If needed, FACs can direct friendly aircraft to destroy hostile targets near them.
We wanted the FAC on the ground to have a nice warm fuzzy and say, when I say clear, hot, and you can drop your bombs, that I know it's going to go on that target. So it made us feel good that, my gosh, at least those guys just got the training. So if they should ever need air support, at least they've had the training and understand the system.
In the last 40 years, more than 45,000 students from multinational forces around the world have attended the school. Among other things, the military students learn that calling in an airstrike requires precise communication with Air Liaison Officers, or ALOs.
80% of our students are people that are not necessarily required to come to the course, but need the course because they work right next to the ALO. And if they can't understand what the ALO is saying, then it causes more friction and the coordination takes longer.
2 years ago, the school instructed some 1,200 students a year. Today, the figure is down to 650. Once military force reductions are complete, Colonel Werner estimates the number of students trained annually will level off at about 600. Sergeant Jim Frost, Air Force News, Sambach Air Base, Germany.
During Operations Desert Shield and Storm, several people became international figures. While retired General Schwarzkopf and Powell remain household names, one of the conflict's more colorful characters has quietly stepped out of the public eye. Senior Airman Brett Baker has more.
I was working in the bunker in Riyadh at the Ministry of Defense building. We called it the MOTA building. And I was right next to the war room where General Schwarzkopf and his staff would have their morning briefings and the war center and everything. We were working a lot of hours, and on some of my freer moments, I would doodle down some funny ideas, some things, events that happened during the day. And I'd pass them out to a few people, and they'd make copies. And before I knew it, they were everywhere. I went by the name Zorro while I was out there, and the cartoon strip was Living in Purgatory. I guess I got a following to a certain degree amongst the people I worked with in the bunker. And one of them packaged it all up and mailed it off to Doonesbury. And boom, it hit the newspaper. I felt like the Rocky Balboa of cartooning. That's the way I'll describe it. I went from a nobody to being in 600 newspapers and annoying everybody in the country. I had to sort of downplay it as well because I didn't want anybody to think that I had some kind of big head. You know, I wanted everyone to think that I was still the same person that I was before that happened. And when the day was over, maybe if I helped a few people lift their morale, lift their spirits, then I've done what I wanted to do that day. The way people feel is important. And if you can help somebody to understand their feelings, then you should never stop yourself. If you can, by doing it with artwork or talking to them or a song or any type of expression that you can, or anything that you can create that'll help people identify with the way they're feeling and then be able to laugh about it and then move on, it's important. So I learned that regardless of what the situation is, if you can help, in whatever way you can help. And so I would do it again.
That's our program for this month. I'm Sergeant Jerry Cormier. Join us in May for another edition of American Forces Perspective.